Hi everybody, this is Joshua Kirk back with you guys once again on YouTube, and now it's time for episode 41 of Album of the Day. And before we get into today's review, I just want a few things to say. I'm sorry that I didn't do a review at all in September. The reason for that was because I've been busy with school and all that. Like, I just started 8th grade and, life's getting a little more busy and a little more hard. So, it can be a little hard for me to do reviews at this time of year when I'm back in school again, but I'm back and I'm refreshed here for October. And you may notice I'm using a different camera and the location's different. I'm using a webcam, like a photo booth webcam thing on my computer. So you notice the location's a little different because I'm shooting this in the office where I use the computer and all that stuff. A few other things that I want to mention is this shirt that I'm wearing. Richard Santos, a good friend of mine who's traveled with one of my favorite bands, Dr. Dog, sent me this shirt. I think it's a new project that maybe Dimitri Manos of Dr. Dog is probably working on or something. So shout out to Richard for this shirt. Thank you for sending me all the great stuff, including this shirt that you just sent me. I know you'll be very excited to see it in this review. And in the background, I have a poster for Justin Townes Earle's album, Midnight at the Movies. Midnight at the Movies, which the kind folks at Bloodshot Records in Chicago gave to me. So I'd like to thank Bloodshot Records for that too. But anyway, let's get on to the review. Today I'm going to talk about an artist who most of you music fanatics out there probably know and love. His name is Tom Waits, singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, mostly playing piano or guitar, as well as a bunch of other crazy instruments too. I'm here to review his 1985 album. The album is called Rain Dogs, and this is one of my favorite Tom Waits albums for a few reasons. One, this is an album. This has a ton of variety on it. He kind of perfected the weird sound that made Swordfish Trombones such a new sound for a lot of people. So I'm here to talk about Rain Dogs, and I love Tom Waits. And the reason for that is because I love artists who are particularly original. Tom Waits kind of sets as an example of that when it comes to very original artists. He's put out a bunch of piano ballad-based albums in the 1970s, such as Closing Time and The Heart of Saturday Night and albums like that. And then in the 80s, he started experimenting a little bit with Swordfish Trombones, which had a sound driven mostly by marimbas and percussion and things like that. Here on Rain Dogs, I think this is a better album than Swordfish Trombones. Don't get me wrong, I love Swordfish Trombones. It's definitely a classic for sure, but I feel Rain Dogs is a better album because he didn't mess with his weird sound. Instead, he just perfected it on here. And I feel the variety's a little more eclectic on this album than it is on Swordfish Trombones. But anyway, here's the cover, spine, other spine, and the back of the CD case. There's a lot of songs on here. There's 19 tracks on it, which is kind of how it was in the 80s. These days, albums only have like about 10 or 11 songs on it. But back then, you had 15, 16 songs on albums. Like Tom Waits had tons of records with a lot of songs on it. I mean, even his 1999 album, Buell Variations, had tons of songs on it. 16 songs in 70 minutes. This one is 19 in 54 minutes, meaning the songs on here are definitely shorter than they are on some other Tom Waits records. The songs on here are Singapore, Clap Hands, Cemetery Polka, Jockey Full of Bourbon, Tango Till They're Sore, Big Black Mariah, Diamonds and Gold, Hang Down Your Head, Time, Rain Dogs, Midtown Instrumental, Ninth and Hennepin, Gun Street Girl, Union Square, Blind Love, Walking Spanish, Downtown Train, Bride of Rain Dog Instrumental, and Anywhere I Lay My Head. And Tom Waits self-produced this album, which is great, because if you self-produce an album, it doesn't sound as washed out or as polished. You make a kind of rougher sound. It's really refreshing to hear something a bit rougher like Tom Waits in an age of pop right now that's just so polished and clean. Sometimes all you need is a really rough album, and I feel self-producing it and writing it yourself kind of is the way to go. It's got a little insert in here. It's got lyrics. Here's a closer view of it. And then there's a photo of Tom Waits in the credits. And then there's the CD itself, and underneath it is nothing. It's a very classic CD case in this album is. And another really natural thing about this album is the recording. They recorded it on analog tapes, the old school way, instead of using computers. But if you really want the true analog sound on an album, I implore you, get it on vinyl, because that's really the way to go if you really want a true analog sound without much digitalness going on with it. So that's Rain Dogs, and it's Tom Waits' second album on Island Records, after leaving his old label, Asylum Records. So that's packaging for Rain Dogs, and let's talk about the tracks on here. The opening track on here is called Singapore, and this song is, it definitely does start out the way you'd expect an original weird Tom Waits album to sound. It's got like 2 guitars, marimbas, percussion, bass, drums, and then a little bit of trombone in there, which is kind of weird because in the liner notes, there is no trombone in the liner notes for this song. So I guess they probably forgot or something. This song is kind of a song talking about sailing away to Singapore and like having to say goodbye to someone. Once you hear a steeple bell or something like that. Tom Waits' voice is basically how you'd expect it to be. Tom Waits is known for having one of the most original voices merging in popular music. You don't hear a lot of voices that sound gruff and smoky, but you definitely do hear that kind of voice with Tom Waits. I think it's a pretty original voice that he has. And then the outro of this song sounds like some sea ship sailing on an ocean on a dark and stormy night. That's kind of what the sound effects at the end sound like. However, I think what it really is someone recording sounds of like the rain and cars driving by on the street outside the recording studio or something like that. To me, that's what I think that really is, but they kind of made it in a way to make people think there was a ship sailing on an ocean on a dark, rainy, and stormy night. So that's kind of what it sounds like at the end. Track number 2 is called Clap Hands, and this song is truly one of the best ones on the album. Definitely a standout. Definitely does stand out from the rest of the songs. The rhythm from the marimbas on that song, really nice. It's got some amazing guitar playing from Marc Ribot on here too. Marc Ribot has played with Tom Waits for years, and I think this is the first album Tom Waits did where Marc Ribot played guitar on it. And this song really does show what a great guitar player Marc Ribot is. But there's a line in this song that really kind of hits home for me. There's a line in there that says, "Shine, shine, Roosevelt dime, all the way to Baltimore and running out of time." Just finding out that Baltimore is being used in this song kind of hits home for me for some reason. So, um, so track number 3 is called Cemetery Polka, and it's kind of a gothic tale about death if you read the lyrics of the song. I mean, it does talk about this guy who like can't live without pills and is almost blind and has some kind of disease or something like that. I mean, hence the title Cemetery Polka. And it totally has a polka feel to it. I mean, it's got a farfisa organ, and parade drums, and a tambourine, and some accordion too. And you wouldn't typically hear a guitar in a polka song, but you do here, which is pretty original for Tom Waits to do that, because to me, he's anything but traditional musically. Track number 4 is called Jockey Full of Bourbon, and this is the first single off the album. And Tom Waits usually doesn't release singles, but here, this is pretty much a single. I mean, if you're a Tom Waits fan, you probably know about the song pretty well. And it's definitely got kind of this Western film type of feel to it. But, you know, it has a few elements in there. Like sure, it's got Western-y guitars and bass and drums, but it's got a few elements in there that you wouldn't typically hear in something from a Western movie, like some congas, some more clangy percussion, as well as a little bit of saxophone at the end, which is pretty nice. Track number 5 is called Tango Till They're Sore, and this has kind of a New Orleans jazz feel to it, which kind of makes sense because it does mention New Orleans in here. And this song has a more stripped down sound to it. Like, a majority of the songs in here have like tons of instruments. I know Clap Hands has like about 50% of the instruments on Clap Hands are like percussions and things like that. And the song Tango Till They're Sore is pretty stripped down because it's got nothing but piano, trombone, and upright bass on here. That's it. Which kind of makes the lyrics kind of the key to the song. I kind of picture Tom Waits in like a bar in New Orleans, seeing people dancing in there, and plus, and probably telling the bartender to just let him fly out the window with confetti in his hair or something like that, and like talking about lying about his past and saying he's going to tell all his secrets when in reality you shouldn't tell your secrets, because you need to protect those from the outside world. Song numbers, I've already said track a bunch of times, so I'm just going to say song for like maybe the rest of the tracks on here. Song number 6 is called Big Black Mariah, and this song is also a pretty minimalistic track. It's got guitars, bass, drums, vocals, that's it. But it's got amazing guitar playing from Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones on it. So seeing that Keith Richards is playing guitar on this album totally is a cool thing to hear, because the Rolling Stones are one of the most popular rock bands, one of the most iconic rock bands in the country. And Keith Richards is like one of the best guitar players on the planet. So he does some amazing guitar work on here. Song number 7 is called Diamonds and Gold, and this song has a pretty unique sound to it. It's got kind of this jungle feel to it with the marimba, and then there's the addition of banjo and guitar, which make it kind of beyond traditional. And this is kind of the song about, some people would just do things for diamonds and gold, no matter how expensive all that can be. Song number 8 is called Hang Down Your Head, and this song is an absolutely beautiful ballad, co-written with Tom Waits' wife, Kathleen Brennan. And And the pump organ on this song, so beautiful. Next comes song number 9, which is called Time, and this is a ballad, this is a ballad with pretty original lyrics on it, and it's pretty nice. It's a breath of fresh air because guitar, double bass, and accordion is pretty much all the instruments that this song needs. Because the lyrics are kind of the important part of it, talking about shadow boys that break the laws, as well as someone named Napoleon who is weeping in a carnival saloon, and finds that an invisible fiance is in the mirror. So it's kind of the song with a pretty original lyric approach, talking about all the sad things that can happen in the world. That's for sure. Track number 10 is the title track, "Rain Dogs," and this song has a great accordion intro in the beginning of it, and then it changes into the song with guitars, bass, drums, and marimba, and then a trombone comes in the middle. And then by the end, the accordion that you hear in the intro comes back into the mix. It's back into the mix. And by Rain Dogs, I'm pretty sure Tom Waits is referring to people that, pretty much endorse, going out at night in the rain, hence the title Rain Dogs. Track number 11 is called Midtown, and it's a cool little instrumental with horns, upright bass, and drums. The interesting thing is that the horns kind of sound like a traffic jam on here. They don't sound so polished. Rather, there's a certain drunkenness to the sound of this instrumental right here. Song number 12 is called Ninth and Hennepin, and this is kind of a spoken word track. Not to mention, Tom Waits is really good at spoken word tracks. On here, he kind of combines his tradition of spoken word songs with his more abrasive sound, with the use of piano, upright bass, marimba, a clarinet, a little bit of percussion in there, and there's a bowed saw on here. When you think of a bowed saw, you think Halloween music or something like that, but here, the bowed saw sounds a lot less melodic than you'd expect. It sounds like the musical saw in here sounds a lot more, screechy than what you would typically think of when you think of someone playing a musical saw with that violin bow or something. Track number 13 is called Gun Street Girl, and this is another highlight of the album. It is another stripped down song, but this time it's actually led by banjo instead of piano and guitar, with a little bit of percussion and upright bass to back it up. Tom Waits tells this interesting tale about a man who went to Indiana and isn't gonna go home again, who soaks day old bread and kerosene and does all kinds of crazy things, and obviously is in love with a Gun Street Girl. Song number 14 is called Union Square, and it's another simplistic song with drums, saxophone, bass, and some amazing guitar from Keith Richards, too. Then you get to Blind Love, which is definitely a true standout from the album. It has Keith Richards playing guitar on it, of course, and then it also has him singing background vocals. It's kind of sweet to hear his voice. He has a pretty distinctive voice, so I think the background vocals are such a distinctive backup to Tom Waits' rather gruff voice. And it has kind of an alt-country feel to it, especially with the use of violins on it. Walking Spanish is a song that's got a pretty simple sound, but it has some amazing saxophone playing on it. Track number 17 is called Downtown Train, and this song has definitely this 80s feel to it. Usually when you think of 80s music, you think of overproduced, washed out music that sounds dated, but Downtown Drain, although it does sound like an 80s song, it still sounds very natural, and it's still a great song. And it's definitely got this rock, it's definitely got this blues rock feel with the guitar and the B3 organ, too. Uh, Track number 18 is called Bride of Rain Dog, an instrumental, which basically is nothing but drums, harmonium, and saxophone. It sounds like it was inspired by Indian music a little bit, because it's all droney and stuff. So it totally sounds as if Tom Waits got inspired by Indian music to make something. It sounded like it, only with no sitar or tablet, just a harmonium, a saxophone, and some drums to back it up. And then it closes with the 19th song, Anywhere I Lay My Head. And this is just a beautiful way to close the album, with something driven by horns and pump organ. And then at the end, and then the outro of the song sounds more like a marching band, because it's got some drums, it's got parade drums, and some horns at the end, which make it totally sound like a marching band. So there's really no flops about Rain Dogs at all. Like, it may be an album from the 80s, but it certainly doesn't sound dated. When you listen to a lot of washed out music from the 80s, it sounds dated. Tom Waits' Rain Dogs does it. It's pretty much timeless. It's kind of similar to like Neutral Milk Hotel and The Aeroplane Over the Sea, an album from the 90s that doesn't sound dated. It definitely is. Like, Neutral Milk Hotels and The Aeroplane Over the Sea is a perfect example of another record that's like, that doesn't sound dated. That sounds timeless, pretty much, even though it's from the 90s. And Rain Dogs from the 80s. So I really like albums that don't even sound dated, that sound timeless, pretty much. And I think Rain Dogs is a perfect example of that. Dogs doesn't. Rain Dogs totally is a perfect example of a record being so timeless, even though it is from the 80s. So I give this album a 9 out of 10. If you've never heard of Tom Waits, this album would probably be a good introduction to Tom Waits. You can start with Closing Time, that's a great album, or The Heart of Saturday Night would be a good place to start. But for the people who really want to go traditional, I recommend starting with Closing Time, then Tom Waits' more piano ballad driven albums before you punch into all the weird stuff that he's done on records like Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs, Bone Machine, Blood Money, Real Gone. Like, before you jump into those, check out Tom Waits' early stuff, like Closing Time or The Heart of Saturday Night or something, because those are both great albums too. But anyway, this is Joshua Kirk signing off.